You are standing in a cave in what will one day be called Israel. It is 13,000 years ago. You have spent 3 days gathering grain, hauling it back in fiber baskets, grinding it down in stone mortars until your arms feel like wet rope. And now you are pouring it into a bowl of water and letting it sit. You are not making bread. You are not making porridge. You are doing something that seems, on the surface, completely unnecessary for survival. You are making beer for a funeral. And the thing is, and this is the part nobody tells you, you are not even the first one to want to drink. That story started millions of years before you were born, and it absolutely has not ended. Let us start at the very beginning, which is way further back than you think. Long before ancient humans were brewing anything on purpose, our primate ancestors were already consuming alcohol. Not out of jars at a party, out of fruit. Biologist Robert Dudley at UC Berkeley proposed something called the drunken monkey hypothesis, which is a real scientific theory and also the best title for a hypothesis in the history of science. The idea is this. Fruit-eating primates evolved to seek out the smell and taste of ethanol because fermenting fruit was ripe fruit. It meant calories. It meant nutrition. The alcohol was the signal. A 2022 study of black-handed spider monkeys in Panama confirmed that they actively seek out and eat fruit with up to 2% alcohol content and then digest it. They are not doing this accidentally. They are choosing it. So when we talk about why humans drink, we are not talking about a human thing. We are talking about a primate thing that is tens of millions of years old. Your attraction to a cold beer after a long day is technically an ancient foraging strategy. You are just missing the fruit pulp. This is either very comforting or mildly horrifying, depending on where you are in your relationship with happy hour. Now, the jump from eating fermented fruit to deliberately making fermented beverages is a big one. And we used to think it happened because humans settled down, started farming, grew surplus grain, and then thought, hey, let us see what happens if we let this sit in water for a while. That was the story. Civilization first, beer second. And then archaeology went and blew that whole narrative apart. We will get to exactly how that happened, but first you need to understand who the Natufians were, because they are about to become your favorite people. The Natufians were hunter-gatherers living in the eastern Mediterranean about 15,000 to 11,500 years ago. They are right at that strange edge of history between nomadic life and settled life. Not quite farmers, not entirely wanderers. And in 1956, archaeologists found something extraordinary near Haifa, in what is now Israel. Raqefet Cave. They found 30 human burials, flower beds under the dead, tools, animal bones. The whole picture of a people who cared enormously about the ritual of death. And then in 2018, a Stanford team led by archaeologist Li Lu went back and looked more closely at the stone mortars carved into the cave floor. What they found in the residue changed the timeline of human brewing entirely. Those mortars, the same ones used for grinding grain, contained starch residues from wheat, barley, and oats that had been malted and fermented. Not just cooked, malted. Fermented. This was a 3-stage brewing process in a cave 13,000 years ago. Li Lu described it as the oldest record of man-made alcohol in the world. And here is the detail that completely reframes everything. This was a burial site. There is no sign the Natufians actually lived here full-time. They came here when someone died. They ground the grain. They brewed the beer. They drank it at the graveside. Ancient humans got drunk at funerals. You do this too. You just call it the wake, and someone brings a lasagna. But here is the question that this discovery cracked open. If hunter-gatherers were already brewing beer before farming existed, before permanent settlements existed, what exactly drove them to start farming? Because farming is genuinely terrible work. Collecting tiny wild grain seeds, separating them from chaff, grinding them by hand, all for a food that is harder to get than just picking berries. So why would anyone bother, for thousands of years, doing all that grinding? Some researchers have been arguing since the 1950s that the answer is beer. Not bread first, beer first. The desire to produce alcohol reliably and in quantity may have been part of what pushed early humans toward the exhausting business of domesticating crops. Farming did not create beer. Beer may have helped create farming. Let that sit. We will come back to what this tells us about human nature, but the story does not stop with the Natufians. Around 9,000 years ago in Jiahu, a Neolithic village in China's Yellow River Valley, molecular archaeologist Patrick McGovern at the University of Pennsylvania analyzed residue from pottery jars and found evidence of a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit, hawthorn and grape, dating to 7,000 BC, a completely independent development. On the other side of the planet, with different ingredients, humans figured out fermentation again. Because of course they did. Because the desire to do this is apparently baked into us at the level of our nervous systems, not just our culture. By 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, beer had become so central to daily life that it shows up in one of the oldest pieces of writing ever found. A clay tablet from the Sumerian city of Uruk, which is in modern-day Iraq, records worker rations. A human head eating from a bowl, meaning ration. A conical vessel, meaning beer. Scratch tallies of how much each worker gets. This is the world's oldest paycheck, and it is paid in beer. The workers who built the ziggurats, the monuments, the infrastructure of the first cities, they were paid in thick, nutritious, slightly alcoholic grain brew 3 times a day. You think your employer giving out free snacks is a perk? In ancient Mesopotamia, the entire compensation package was fermented grain porridge, and you had to drink it on site. And here's what makes all of this land differently, when you really sit with it. Beer did not just lubricate the workers, it built communities. Archaeologist Lindy Crew at the University of Manchester has pointed out that alcohol-induced social warmth, the lowered defenses, the loosened tongues, the sudden willingness to trust people you just met, may have actually helped hunter-gatherers bond with strangers in the emerging villages of the Neolithic world. Larger groups meant more cooperation. More cooperation meant shared labor. Shared labor meant farming. Farming meant civilization. There is a direct line from the first fermented fruit a primate ate in a tropical forest millions of years ago to the city you live in right now. That line runs directly through a communal bowl of ancient beer shared at a stranger's funeral. Ancient humans bonded with outsiders over alcohol at communal gatherings. You do this too. It is called a work happy hour, and you will also talk to people you would never otherwise talk to, and by the end you will feel surprising levels of goodwill toward the intern. Same mechanism, millions of years old. This video discusses anthropological and archaeological research for educational purposes. Modern hunter-gatherer observations are used as comparative models to understand ancient human behavior, not as definitive proof of how all ancient humans lived across different time periods and geographies. So let us go back to that cave. 13,000 years ago, in Rockafet Cave, someone just lost a person they loved. They came to the burial ground. They ground the grain. They brewed the beer, the thick, porridge-like, low-alcohol, multi-ingredient grain soup that bore almost no resemblance to what is in your fridge right now. They drank it together. And in that act, they were not being primitive. They were not stumbling through early human behavior. They were doing something that every human civilization that has ever existed has done in some form, using a slightly mind-altering shared experience to help process grief, to feel connected to the dead, and to hold on to the living. The recipe has changed. The bottle has changed. The occasion honestly has not. You are, right now, the product of millions of years of fruit-seeking primates, 13,000-year-old ritual brewers, and Sumerian workers who negotiated their wages in grain beer. Every drink you have ever raised is, in some small ridiculous way, a 10-million-year-old inheritance. The question is not why ancient humans drank. The question is whether you thought you were any different.